that all supervisors are present, in addition to the clerk administrator, the treasurer, and office personnel. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming. If you've got a cell phone, if you wouldn't mind putting it on vibrate or turning it off so as not to interrupt the meeting. And a reminder to the board to please speak into the microphones. And would you please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Just a quick mention, we were in a closed session in reference to the agreement that the town has with the Department of Natural Resources on obtaining the launch ramp and shorefront area in Raleigh's Bay, which will become a town park. We have decided to go back to the original agreement, which would have the town acquire that property in the year 2016. Okay, on to the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
If we can get Greg from Soil and Water on as quickly as possible, he has to go to Gibraltar after this meeting.
Sure. Anything else? All right, let's go on then to the minutes. While your message said they were the minutes of the 21st of May, they actually are the minutes of June 18th. Are there any additions, corrections to those minutes? If not, I will move their approval as presented.
Second.
Motion by Lowry, seconded by Mulligan. All in favor indicates by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried.
Which ones did you just do?
18th June.
Okay.
And then we have the meeting of June 12th with the Finance Committee. Are there any additions or corrections to those? If not, the chair will move their approval as presented.
I second that.
And seconded by Forkert. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. And then the special board meeting of June 18th. The chair will move their approval as presented. Is there a second?
I'll
get
second
All right. All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried.
Who second?
You.
I did.
Okay, payment of bills.
I have a question. Are these actually paid or are these to be paid?
To be paid.
To be
To be paid. And I have a question. The excavation work done at Holtz Park, that was redoing roads or something over there? What was that?
That's part of the beach remediation project that is being done through a grant administered by Soil and Water. And
Is that the town's percent of input or something like that, or?
the town is paying upfront and then will be reimbursed with the grant money. That's already been obtained, I believe.
They're here tonight to present the check, right? I guess not.
Sand Bay is the other one that's being.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that this, but I knew Sand Bay.
It's a water quality, water reclamation program.
Okay, any other questions? I'll move the approval of the bills as presented. Is there a second, please? Seconded by Gaz. All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Okay. Public input. This is the opportunity to address the board on any given subject and also on any agenda subject. So if anybody has some general comments, if you wouldn't mind, please stepping to the podium. We are recording for YouTube. Any general comments? Mike?
Michael Mercier, 12054 Highway 42, Ellison Bay. I would just like to send thanks to the board and the town in general for whatever involvement and help you had in making Ellison Bay Days and the Uncork Summer Festival this past weekend quite a success. There were a lot of people in town. I think we need more events like that if we're going to continue to grow as a community and as an economy. And like I said, I'd just like to extend thanks personally from me to the board and to the town for whatever help. I'm sure you were involved some and gave some support. So thanks again.
Thank you. Any other general comments? Okay, anybody on any agendized item? We just need to get your name down. Yep, Mary Pat's here. Hi. Anybody else? Mike?
Yeah, item 9
Okay,
and item 10. And I may have some questions on item 12.
Okay.
as well, please.
anybody else? Okay, if not, Fragmites. Oh, I'm sorry,
Mrs.
yes.
Penny.
I'd like to make comments on item 10.
Going once? Going twice? Okay, Fragmites.
Good evening. A few handouts here for you just to go along with the presentation. And I believe Frank had talked about this last year actually as to the Phragmites control program that we've been running through the Soil and Water Department. And quite simply, last year we just
Thank you.
did not have enough manpower or funding to go forward with any kind of treatment efforts
Thank you.
for Woodbridge Road. And now that we have a good inventory, we do have the fundings through some grants and through some donations, and I want to inform you on the project, the program, and also request a donation. But the main thing is I want to inform you about the program because we're about to send out a letter to a lot of private landowners that have not been given this opportunity to participate in this program. So I want you folks to know about it before everybody starts calling you up at home. And secondly, once we do, if we do get a donation from the town, we'll put that in the letter so that we show how important this is to them. And in that letter, we'll also have a voluntary donation form. And I'll go through kind of the slides that I have here. I didn't bring the PowerPoint, but I will go through the slides, kind of the control program efforts that we've done. And we've been very successful in the last few years. Our control program started in 2009 with some very small efforts, but in the last couple of years, we're treating many, many acres, in some cases hundreds of acres when we partnered with the DNR. So just at the top left of the slides that I have there, we have two control efforts that we're really focusing on right now in the county. And by focusing, I mean we're using contractors to do a lot of the treatments. And we're dealing with Phragmites, which you might have seen along the highway right-of-ways heading down to Kewanee or Green Bay. If you notice, there's a lot of dead patches of that really tall grass. Most of those are now dead within the right-of-ways and some of the private properties. Shoreline stuff is a little harder to see, but that's where our other focus has been. And that's why I'm here tonight, is to talk about the shoreline populations in Liberty Grove. The plant is called Phragmites australis, or common reedgrass. Typically, it can grow to 10 feet in height or more, sometimes to 14 feet in height. It spreads three ways: underground by rhizomes, above ground by stolons, which is kind of like an above ground vine that can grow 40 to 60 feet in a year. And every 18 inches, it can set down another node or a root. So it can go across a gravel driveway and establish in another ditch or waterway, or cross somebody's lawn, as far as that goes. It also reproduces by seed. But by far, the rhizomes and the stolons are our main concern. So most of our treatment takes place after Labor Day, when the plant is starting to bring the energy back down into the roots, put the sugars back in. What we found, and that's the middle slide there on the right, is kind of an example of our GPS inventory. So we know pretty much exactly how many square feet are out there. Gives the contractor a good estimate for cost. We can put it out for accurate bid. And that blue shading there is basically what we do is when a person gives permission, we highlight it. We give these maps all to the contractor so that we know who gave permission, because we will not treat it where permission is not granted, and also how big it is. So on that bottom right photo slide, it's not a cell phone demonstration of reception out here, but that is a inventory of what we have so far. So I can send you this PowerPoint if anybody would like to look at it on a little bigger screen. But basically, we have inventoried all the shoreline in Door County, with the exception of a few small areas. Liberty Grove and Egg Harbor and Gibraltar is one of the last shorelines that we did our inventory on. Gibraltar, we finished a couple weeks ago. So turning the page, we did about an acre of treatment in 2009, and those are the red dots, which again are very, very hard to see. And again, this is not a cell phone commercial. But 2010, we treated about 10 acres. Most of that treatment took place around Detroit Island, the south shore of Washington Island, and Chambers Island. And what we learned in that year is that treating the Phragmites was most effective when we treated large blocks at one time. In other words, we treated the entire populations. The year prior to that, in 2009, we had some grant money left over, and we more or less did a first come, first serve. And what happened is, for example, if John signed permission and Nancy signed for permission, but the rest of you didn't, that were next to you, the next year that stuff grew right back in. So we've learned that if we're gonna offer the program, we're gonna offer it to everybody, educate everybody, and move forward. What we've been doing is doing the spray program for 2 years in a row, mainly because we get 95% kill or better the first year. That following year, it's critical to get those last remaining plants. So we try to offer it for 2 years, and then we try to have that education take forward, and we're working on some other grants right now where we might try to empower some of the town boards by providing seed money, but that's coming up in a few years, hopefully. In 2011, there was over 200 acres treated in Door County. Most of that was with backpack sprayers. It was through a very large DNR grant through EPA, or Great Lakes Restoration Initiative. And on that map, you can see a lot of black colored ink. And there was some aerial stuff done there with the helicopter, one specifically in the Gardner Marsh. Other counties were involved with this program as well, Oconto and Marinette, to name two. Most of that was done with aerial there. The problem that we faced with this project is that most of the treatments were done in conservation opportunity areas, which the DNR has a definition of. These are your highly sensitive areas, the areas that have the most diversity. And for the most part, it's public property. So we had a lot of people after that point in time saying, what about the Phragmites on my private property? What are you gonna do to help me? So that's where in 2012, we kicked it into high gear. And we included all of Southern Door that was not treated by the DNR, which is Little Sturgeon and parts by the canal. We also included Sevastopol shoreline. And that effort, we eventually did the right-of-ways that year too, but that effort resulted in 36 acres treated on the shoreline and 16 acres on the right-of-ways in Southern Door. 2013, we retreated those same areas, and we added Jackson Port and Bailey's Harbor, which was another 16 acres. Turning the page, just to give you some examples, there's a picture on the top left of the Gardner Marsh. And if you look at that photo real closely, you're gonna see some very light green or gray colored circles. On the aerial photography, if you look back several years, you can see how this plant went from very small to very large populations. The slide below it has a couple of red lines. Those are the GPS trackings that the helicopter recorded when they treated it. And on the bottom was the following year, how effective that treatment was. So you can see that the herbicide killed the entire population and some of the surrounding vegetation as well. But we have learned that you basically have to start over from ground zero when you have a monoculture like Phragmites that has taken over. The other program is wild parsnip. If you want, I can talk about that. But I'm going to go back to the back page that I handed out. Funding sources that we've had for this program and the parsnip program has been primarily through the U.S. Forest Service. We just received our 4th consecutive grant from them. They have been very supportive of our efforts, and those grants have in the past required a 1-to-1 match, and they still do as far as that goes. So we've had to come up with match dollars 1-to-1 for all of these grants to keep moving forward and getting the grants. And Hugh, of course, has seen many of these grants come across the desk at the county board level and at our land conservation committee level. The Lakeshore Natural Resource Partnership, they were one of the first funding sources that worked on this project with us for Detroit Island and Washington Island. In the last 2 years, we received over $21,000 from the towns in Door County for this effort. And that has ranged from anywhere from $500 to over $11,000 just in match money for this effort. Landowner donations in the last 2 years were over $31,000. So what this shows is that there's a lot of people interested in getting rid of this invasive species. There's been a lot of support, and it's been very successful. The last bullet there is the DNR, the EPA Great Lakes Restoration Grant. That grant, I want to say, was close to $900,000 from multiple counties.
Yes.
And I'm looking at Krista here because she was a part of that program effort when she was with the DNR. She is now a new employee with the Soil and Water, so she's getting some experience with the program here. The last, there's partners there. We have several partners that have been involved with this program. But that bottom slide on the left there is just a printout, a screenshot of some of the control efforts that we're doing and is visible on the Door County web map. So if you go to the Door County web map, click on the conservation folder, click on the invasive species folder, and then go look at parsnip or Phragmites, you can actually look at what we've inventoried for both species and where we've treated for Phragmites. All the parsnip we've been working on for all the years, so we didn't put a treatment level in there. What we did last year will probably be updated as soon as we have a person return from vacation. So the 13 treatments will be on the web map, hopefully by the time I send the letter out to all the landowners. The other handout I gave you is kind of a blown up picture of Liberty Grove, including Sister Bay. Everything that is green on the shorelines is our inventory, and that inventory is inclusive since 2009. So once we have that inventory, we keep it on there, even though we have a layer that shows these individual years separately. The black coloring are the areas that have been treated in one or another programs in the last couple of years. So on Marshall's Point, there's a bunch of black there because a contractor has worked with that association. Up above on Northport, that was all DNR treatment. And as you can see, there's several areas there that have not been treated yet. Specifically between Marshall's Point and the Mink River, we have about 21 acres there, which is going to be a big project. Up by the ferry dock, we have about 1/10 of an acre. Ellison Bay has about 2 acres, and then about 3/100 of an acre in Sister Bay. And I'll be meeting with them probably on the 15th, I think it is, as well. So with that, that's pretty much what I have to update you on, and if you have any questions, or if you want to support this in any way or fashion.
I have a question for you, Greg.
Sure.
I want to go back to the June 12th post-aerial treatment that you had in the Gardner Swamp,
Yep.
where it's all brown is where you actually sprayed there.
Right.
Is there Phragmites outside the sprayed area, or is that just?
There is. There were areas that the helicopter could not get to because of trees. So there's a bunch of dead trees in that marsh that, are 20 or 30 feet high, and the helicopter could not get down close enough to those to treat it. So part of this effort, there was a lot of narrow leaf cattail in these areas too. That's why they went with kind of a broadcast spray, helicopter spray, because they were killing a lot of other invasives as well. But there are areas that were not treated in there because they just physically couldn't get to them.
How about the stretch now between Marshall's Point and Rowley's Bay? Would that be a helicopter type treatment there?
We're not proposing anything aerial with this program. We would be all backpack.
Okay, but is that an area that has some priority or not?
Everything that hasn't been treated yet is what our priority is right now. So Rowley's Bay is, let's see, some
Looks
people.
like the park has been treated, but not Rowley's Bay.
Yeah, the park has been treated. Let me get to that map here again. How far south are you looking, Hugh?
Well, I'm just kind of looking at this stretch, here's the park, whoops, right here. Here's Marshall's Point, I'm looking at this.
Yep. That entire area is what we're proposing, is about 21 acres. We're proposing to treat that entire area with backpack.
Okay. That's a significant amount of shoreline for Liberty Grove.
It's one of the highest concentrations.
Yep,
we
Boltman's
have.
doing my property. Do we pay him privately? I can't remember.
The one thing that we do have to look at on a portion of this is that there are several landowners currently working with 2 contractors in that area. We have to evaluate, number one, if they have a contract with them. 2, if they're already controlling this, why should we offer this to somebody
Sure.
that's already doing the right thing?
Mhm.
On the flip side, somebody could say, why are you offering this free to this individual, but why are these people paying it? So in this case, the people that have been progressive, we might get left out of this program, but at the same time, they might not have much or anything left. So the inventory that we did was last year, last summer. Some of this could have been treated last fall. So we do have to confirm that, but it's difficult to do the inventory, the meetings, the letters all in the same year.
Sure.
Nancy?
I have a question, Greg. Is this program just for shoreline Phragmites, or we have a neighbor who has a 2.7 acre wildlife pond, and he recently purchased the property. The pond was there, it's been there probably about 10 years now, after the county did some mining for sand and stuff. And the cattails found it and moved in within a couple of years, and our property is immediately adjacent to it, and I noticed 3 years ago, the Phragmites found it. And I've been watching the patches grow over the years. Does he have an option of contacting the county and getting, I don't even think he knows what Phragmites is.
Yeah.
But I'll tell him.
Our strategy has been to take care of the treatment in the areas that are most likely to spread. And so far, that has been your right-of-ways and your shorelines.
Okay.
And our goal is if we can get those 2 under control, we're probably then gonna go inland and probably have a cost share program of some sorts. But I can tell you, we have been doing inventories from the road to look at right-of-ways in Northern Door. We're also making map symbols on our maps on private property from the road. So if we can see the population from the road, we have been mapping that. And our intent or goal is to, if the grants allow us, to then make that jump inland. So with this effort, not yet.
Okay.
Future years, it's our intent to help the rest of the landowners inland. But we
All right.
we can't bite off too much.
Thanks.
What's the herbicide approach?
It's called Habitat. The active ingredient is an imazapyr, and it's similar to, well, it's a non-selective herbicide, sort of like what you hear with glyphosate. If it's green, it's going to take care of it. And I believe the active window is 13 months, 13 months. And again, we'll do that treatment after Labor Day is the proposed time period.
Greg, is there any experience with other municipalities in terms of their donating and thereby garnering support from their constituents? You have any track record with that yet, or is the program too new?
As far as how much they've donated, or?
Not necessarily how much, although that's a good question too. But no, in terms of, you mentioned that if the town were able to contribute, you would include that in the notification letters to the individual
Right.
landowners.
Right, what we found is that if the town is given a donation, and I put that in the letter, a lot of these landowners will then potentially ask you about it. Because a lot of times you get mail, is this junk mail or is this serious? We want them to think it is. But it's all about buy-in, it's all about education. It's why we're gonna send it to everybody in these areas. And we want everybody to know about this. It helps when the town puts money into it because they say, if it's important to the town, it's important to me. And for a lot of people, they don't even know what it is yet. But some towns, one town in particular has gone a step further now, and they've adopted an ordinance under their noxious weed ordinance that most towns have. I don't know how active that is here, but they actually added Phragmites to that noxious weed ordinance,
Which town was that?
Naswapee.
Do they have a lot down there?
They participated in the treatment program the last 2 years. They're the township that donated $11,000.
Sullivan? Cheap old Sullivan?
I hit them at the right time when we didn't have any snow that year. So the budget money was there. Last year was a little tougher, but it's been a very popular program, and I think you can see by what we've done, if you look at some of the right-of-ways, it's been successful, especially just south of Sturgeon Bay by the Quiet Woods RV. There's that big curve there. We really took that out where we had permission, so.
So I'd like to see, Mr. Chairman, if we could have this on a future agenda to talk about a donation.
We've got a finance meeting coming up on the 15th.
15th, yeah.
Maybe finance can discuss it. Parks and Property could take a whack at it too. They've got a meeting coming up next week.
If I use current numbers, from the person that has the bid right now, first year treatment's gonna be about $8,000 if we treated everything, all 23 acres or so. Second year.
8,000 you said?
About 8,000. That's if the bid comes in at the same. We're gonna put this out for bid, mid-July. Second year treatment is gonna be substantially less than that, a couple hundred or a couple $1,000s, $2,000 to $3,000. And then if we do a mowing, portion of that, there's a mowing that's sometimes done between the first and the second year. And that's done for 2 reasons, for aesthetics, let the person see their water again, and 2, so that if any plants do come up the next year, they're much easier to see. So they may be mowed as well. It all depends on what the contractors offer, but if you figure about $700 an acre, that would be fair for total cost.
That's 21 acres.
22 to 23 acres times 700.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, I got one. What's the latest on EAB?
We have it,
That's it.
2
huh?
places, yeah. The forecast is not good. But we are looking into some of the natural wasp, try to get some wasps up here that'll actually predate on them. So apparently there's one that works well, but doesn't overwinter well, and then they're trying to, they're studying another one, but it's not good.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And give our regards to the Gibraltar Town Board, would you please?
I will do that.
Thank you.
We're heading there next. Thank you.
Thank you much. Okay, going on to the GEO DC presentation, Nancy?
Well, we're fortunate tonight to have with us, making a presentation on geotourism, Joanne Klusendorf, who is the director of the Weiss Earth Science Museum in Menasha and also a very active member of GeoDC. Thanks, Janet.
I'm sorry, Joanne, what was your last name again, please?
Klusendorf, K-L-U-E-S-S-E-N-D-O-R-F, German from Milwaukee. My doctorate's in geology, and I have been studying the Niagara Escarpment in Wisconsin and the rest of North America for many years. And I was delighted to hear that the GeoDC was forming and was very happy to be serving on it. What I want to tell you about, though, is geotourism. Now, typically, as a geologist, I know that rocks don't get any respect, okay? You remember Rodney Dangerfield. And, but now, in the early 2000s, National Geographic actually came up with the concept of geotourism, in that geotourism is tourism that sustains the environment and actually enhances the geological and geographical character of a place, its environment, but along with all its heritage and other aesthetics and its cultures. And it's very much interested in the economic development of the local citizens. And so it's using all these things integrated together based on the geologic features in an area to make sustainable tourism possible. It's something very different than what has come before. And one of the things that they learned in doing some studies in Australia on geotourism is that people who tour for these reasons, they think that having the geological processes and features explained to them actually doubles the value of their vacation. So it's something that really people like. And they're the kind of tourists that I think people like to have too. Geotourism is actually considered more sustainable than ecotourism because you don't need to have pristine environments to work with geotourism. You can do geotourism in a quarry. Okay, you can talk about the geologic processes looking at a quarry wall. You don't have to have the pristine wilderness to actually do it. However, you want to preserve as much of that as possible in order to integrate the whole. It's based really on the character of the place. It's not the standardized branding that you have in other places, not all the generic architecture, not the generic food, not the generic attractions. It's really emphasizing what makes a place special, and that's what people come for. Not to belabor this much, but there are many things that have to be done, but they're all really doable. Things like hosting events that focus on the geologic features, designing earth science curricula for the schools in an area so that people learn about what's special about their particular site. And actually, I should add that I'm also a part of the Niagara Escarpment Resource Network, and right now we're working on designing a curriculum for fourth graders in all of eastern Wisconsin about the Niagara Escarpment. So that's already being done. Before geotourism, when you did design things for tourists to come into an area, not you, but just in general, it was all about making consumers feel at home. So what things happened was you abandoned the things that made a place special, made a place unique, and sort of homogenized everything so that you can go, it's like a shopping mall. Your tourism destination can be pretty much just like any other. It ignored local economic sustainability because a lot of times it brought in people from outside that really made the most economic profits. And after geotourism was developed, the idea that you use the natural and the cultural distinctiveness, you emphasize that, you bring them together, you integrate, you actually show people, you underscore what makes a place special. And that really has been found to support the economic stability of the local communities. It relates to all the other all the other tourism concepts like ecotourism and cultural tourism and adventure tourism. People who like those different kinds of tourism actually all fit under the umbrella of geotourism, and they all share some similar qualities that you'll see in a minute. Around the world, as I said, geotourism is a big popular concept, and around the world, what they found is that by educating people about the processes, the geologic processes that produce the scenery, the landscape that you're looking at, it actually makes people better appreciate the landscape, the scenery. It fosters the sense of conservation of the features. It provides lifelong learning experiences, which is what a lot of the people who are interested in this kind of a tourist opportunity. And it demonstrates the association with geology and the ecosystems and the cultural development and everything else that comes along. It also has cultural links. So in other words, it's not just about the geologic feature, but it is what the geologic feature has impacted within the greater part of society. So it's the historical things, the industrial history, for instance, the lime kilns in this area, the archaeology, the arts, architecture, cuisine, agriculture. All those things can be highlighted in a geotourism concept, in a geotourism package. And it really expands the tourism base, and it also provides the kind of experience that the affluent and the educated tourist prefers. And there are innovative ideas that people have been doing around the world to get people excited about the geotourism concept. So they've come up with innovative ideas, things like interpretive centers and museums and educational materials like the brochure up there that's out there. Mascots, they've developed mascots. That guy down there in the lower left-hand corner is actually a column of basalt from an old volcano, and it's a little mascot. And marathon, there's a marathon that's based though on the geologic features, so it gets people excited and learning about the actual natural features that we're talking about. It gives them the opportunity to talk about these things and pass things on by word of mouth because they're excited about different things that they're learning. And the important thing about geotourism, though, is that you have to involve local people in the decisions and in the establishment of geotourism concept locally. You want to educate the locals about the heritage, why the geology is like it is. You want to create curiosity in them and enthusiasm so they talk up the place so that they are proud of the place, that they develop a sense of place. Everybody talks about the ledge or about the bluffs, but really get people to understand what those are about, their history. And geotourism is well developed in many countries around the world. Why not here? Actually, the United States is probably the least effective at talking about geotourism, period. In China, they've developed so many geoparks that they were told they were limited by the number they could do every year. Okay, here, nothing, not even the Grand Canyon. So we've got a great opportunity here. We've got the Niagara Escarpment. That red line is a 1,000-mile long rock ridge that extends from Niagara Falls, approximately in New York State, through Ontario, Upper Peninsula, Michigan, and into Wisconsin. It's 1,000 miles long. It's like the backbone of North America. And Wisconsin has 1,000 miles of that. And Door County has the greatest part of that within Wisconsin. And this is really our opportunity for geotourism. Niagara Falls is part of the Niagara Escarpment. And that, I'm sure you all know, Niagara Falls is a big tourist attraction and has been for a long time. In fact, these illustrations show that it actually goes back to the 17th century. People from Europe came over to see Niagara Falls. So geotourism is not a new concept. The geological concepts and processes, not going to go into this, but there are reasons that the escarpment looks like it does, the age of the rock, what the environment was like. I mean, imagine it used to be shallow water seas here in a tropical environment when North America, or this part of North America, was south of the equator. You could stand in the water ankle deep and wiggle your toes. It was wonderful. And people don't realize that. And at the same time, about less than 10,000 years ago, we had glaciers here that actually produced the ridge that we call Door County. It's because of the escarpment that Door County's here. And the history, the architecture, the industry, the culture, there's mining and lime kilns and the lighthouses and the architecture. You can see some of that beautiful local stone and buildings from Sturgeon Bay. And there's just so much that you can incorporate in the concept of geotourism and have many, many people benefit locally from this integration. And of course, there's all the natural environments, the caves and the scenery and the botany, and of course we all know about the Ice Age snails. I think there's a bat over there in the lower right. There's lots and lots of natural things to talk about and to make people aware of and sensitive to. And of course there's the viticulture, the agriculture, the cuisine. Arts are part of it too, because there are oftentimes local arts that are folkloric or historic and things like that that you can really use to incorporate with the concept. And of course, quiet sports, things like kayaking, so you can see the escarpment in a new way. And who are the geotourists? And this is what's very interesting, I think. There are the geo-savvies, the urban sophisticates, and the good citizens. And without belaboring any of this, they are generally more affluent and more educated, and they want to learn on their vacations. That's the experience they want. They want an educational experience. And the geotourism idea really appeals to them. It turns out the Travel Industry Association of America in 2002 found that 55 million Americans considered themselves geotourists in that year. And in Australia, where they've done a lot of this work, they have found like numbers. And we have the takeaway points here. The Niagara Escarpment, it's a large feature. It's international in scope. It will bring a lot of focus on this geologic feature that we have up here and is so nicely displayed. Door County has the characteristics that provide lots of unique opportunities for integration of the culture and history and things like that. Geotourism integrates all these aspects and it provides economic stability in a local sense. And finally, it is the kind of tourism that attracts the consumers who take the most trips and who spend the most money. So that is it.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you, Joanne.
Is there an inventory of the lime kilns in the area?
There is not an inventory, but that's one of my research focus. I have done a lot of the history of the lime kiln in the area, and actually Door County is a very interesting place because a lot of them are very difficult to locate. There were so many scattered around in rural areas, as well as the more prominent ones like the Gardner kilns. Mhm. Do you have an inventory?
There's one nearby here, as far as I know,
Whereabouts?
down near the corner here.
Really? Oh,
When I was there as a kid, somebody told me it was one.
I may contact you. Okay. Yeah. Any other questions?
I have a question, please. If you had a magic wand,
Mm-hmm.
what would you do differently in Door County that's being done now? What would you change? What would you?
I would provide a greater focus for the visitors on the natural features, okay? I see when I come through some of the towns, the focus is more on the streets. And I don't know how many people really get out into the off the beaten path and actually take a field trip, or are they available, that kind of thing. What a lot of people do in other countries is they provide bike tours, they provide boat tours, they provide all kinds of things to focus on the natural features. And that brings in economic development for the local people, who do these things. And at the same time, you also provide those other attractions, which then are taken in integration with the idea of the natural environment, how it all relates, So more, I guess, focus on some of the unique things. Okay, so like I said, the architecture is unique. I mean, I can tell you of going from southern Wisconsin up to through Door County. If you show me a picture of a building, I can tell you where it is, because of a certain age from the 19th century, because they use local materials. And as a geologist, I know what those are through the state, and I can tell you, I can pinpoint it probably within 20 miles. So that's the kind of thing people don't realize. They just don't understand that. You just don't drop people in a place and then it happens. It just doesn't work that way. I live in Appleton area now, and the Fox River was the place with the most paper industry, most paper mills in the world, actually, at one time. And it was all because of the geology of the river providing these rapids, which created water power that allowed the paper industry to develop, and then later the hydroelectricity industry. It has the house that was first powered by hydroelectricity from a central power station, all because of the geology, which actually dates back to 500 million years ago. And it's the kind of thing that really, when you tell people about that, they're like, whoa, that's really exciting. I didn't realize that. And they have a new perspective on their environment, on how, both locally, how a person looks at, their neighborhood, and from visitors coming in from all around the world, who then see a site as a special place because they didn't realize there was this story behind everything. Did that sort of...
It did, but I think that, I think it might be more prevalent, you think already, that a lot of people come here to look at some of the geographical.
I agree, but I know a lot of people do. I know a lot of people do. But what I'd like to see is perhaps even a greater push to provide these things for varying at varying levels, so that somebody has time to do this, somebody has time to do that, you know what I mean? And you can really make it a several day field trip, or you can make it an afternoon or a half an hour, that kind of thing. We have to be thinking about the outreach that we can do based on people's time and, and interest and things like that. And the idea is to hook them and then get them interested.
Do you think the
And,
Visitors Bureau would be a good way good way to promote this or not?
I'm sorry?
The Visitors Bureau, Chamber of Commerce?
That's certainly, in fact, the Door County Visitors Bureau does a pretty good job of promoting things. But I think that what they could do is a better job of promoting the integration of these things based on the escarpment. I don't see a lot of things hanging on the concept of the escarpment. It's like individual things. There's the wine and there's the this and there's the that, you know what I mean? And to really talk about, we're here, the Niagara Escarpment. I mean, this is an international feature and you can see it here up close, And that's maybe where we need more advertisement of the kinds of opportunities that are available to go out and see it. Obviously there are exposures in Peninsula State Park and Potawatomi and things like that. But it's they show it to campers and things, but it's rather low key. And I think we have to understand that it's not just the family with their 2.5 children that come in on RV for the weekend. It's people who come internationally to see these kinds of features. I mean, seriously, this is not small potatoes. This is big time stuff. And if we emphasize things properly, if we target certain areas and certain people, I think you'll see a broader interest in the area because of the focus on the natural features and all the things that integrate with it. It's, like I said, stuff doesn't just drop down and start up. It's based on what people found locally in nature, the natural resources that they had to work with. And that's what I think people really, truly find interesting because it gives them a sense of place. It gives them a feeling of, where do we come from kind of thing, And because I'm an educator and outreach person with having run the museum, I find that really spurs curiosity of people. And it makes it so much more valuable to them to have that educational information about a place. And they just look at the world in a different way. And I think that they also become better visitors because they appreciate the value of the natural sites, so that they want to see things preserved. They want to see they want to be able to come back and see the ancient cedars and and the bluffs and things like that. So, yep.
And
Any other questions?
Joanne, first, thank you for the very wonderful presentation. And it's always very encouraging to see what kind of wonderful resources we have in our own backyard. Specifically, though, to sort of take a cue from Hugh's question about the magic wand, obviously, one of the specifics that we've been thinking about for a while that would be able to be within we think, the purview of the town of Liberty Grove is to create an interpretive center. Is that the kind of lightning rod that tends to pull a lot of the things that you talked about and hang that on there?
Yes, yes, it does. And in the case of the interpretive center that GODC is talking about, it's really an international interpretive center. There is no specific interpretive center about the Niagara Escarpment anywhere in North America. I'll have to say that Ontario has been much more progressive than the United States in protecting the escarpment that they have there, and they've been doing it for about 50 years now, so they're far ahead. But at the same time, they have little local parks and things, but they don't have the concept of, come here and you will learn about this fabulous geologic feature. As I said, it's the backbone of North America. And it's, it tells a lot about the ancient history of the earth, and it's a beautiful landscape, and it has provided lots of our history. For instance, the Erie Canal was built in part, because, in fact, primarily, because of the Niagara Escarpment. They couldn't come from Lake Erie into the other Great Lakes because they had to go over this huge bluff of rock. So they built the locks that raised it up over in Lockport, New York. And that's one of the things that opened the Midwest to development, and it was the frontier. And without the escarpment, that may not have happened very soon, or it may have happened differently. But, you know, so it really does say a lot about a national and international history, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions anybody has? Good, thank you very much.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thanks, John.
I think we probably are sitting on a gold mine.
No, we are. It's called a landmine.
Actually, can I say one more thing?
Sure.
You have a very interesting place here up in Door County. It's not quite up this far, but Sawyer Harbor was actually the only place that the Department of War of the United States ever reserved for quarry land in the early 1800s. And that was because you could get the kind of rock that was needed for harbor development around the Great Lakes at a time that we were trying to protect ourselves from the British and the French. So, very important thing. Bye-bye now.
Thank you. Okay. Hugh said a lot of the research that the now Visitor Bureau has done, interesting enough, obviously did not specifically focus on, you know, such things as the escarpment. Lighthouses tied in the maritime background of the county was noted to be one of the top attractions that visitors would mention when these things were being done. And the natural environment, which obviously could take into the Niagara Escarpment. Okay. Garrett Bay Road.
Can I just add one quick thing here? You know,
Sure.
I'm in the inn business, and this year we've had people from Germany, we've had people from France.
Yep.
It's not people from Milwaukee all the time anymore.
Right.
It's changed.
Yeah. Okay, Bud?
This is on because of the semi-postponement, I guess, of paving Garrett Bay Road pending the information that was gathered from the seminars on the Emerald Ash Borer up in Door Bluff Park. And I guess the information that is coming forward is that they don't really know what they're gonna do up there yet. So at the town meeting the other night, the sentiment from a lot of the citizens was that we should not really wait because you don't know what's gonna happen. The road could lay there for a long time for waiting for logging. So it's up to the board now to decide if they wanna go ahead with the paving as originally thought.
Do we have anybody in the audience?
Mike Mercier wanted to talk.
Mike, you want to make a comment, please?
Yeah, I was at the meeting the other night as well, would reiterate what Bud said as far as what the sentiment in the group was, and would just like to encourage the board to very much consider and hopefully approve to go ahead with the resurfacing of Garrett Bay Road, regardless of what happens with the ash borer. I think that road's gotta be fixed. If logging trucks were to drive up and down it for a winter with it in the shape it's in now, you'd end up having to reconstruct the whole thing at some point rather than just resurface it, and that's significantly more expensive, I believe, so. But again, I would reiterate what Bud said. The sentiment at the meeting the other night was very much strongly that a lot of folks that were in favor of the motion and voted yes, were voting yes because they wanted Garrett Bay Road repaired. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, we have one bid that came in from Northeast Asphalt,
Correct.
and that was in the amount of,
154,900.
and the result of the vote the other evening is that the board has the okay to exceed the 5,000 per mile. Finance indicated, and I believe the board has kind of indicated that that money could come out of contingency if we felt comfortable enough with that.
I think, you know, finance can certainly deal with this on the 15th, but seeing as how the excess funds that were voted into the budget prior to, well, that was on November 18th, prior to not being allowed to exceed the 5,000 per mile, those funds were split into capital reserve and contingency. I would think either of those pools of money, if you will, could be tapped into for this. I would be reluctant had we had an established capital reserve fund with line itemed things in it. But seeing as how it was just basically started with the last budget cycle and with the excess money in the budget that had been hopefully slated for this, I think this year in this project, it could be considered. The other thing I would urge the board to do, I also am very supportive of doing Garrett Bay this year. I would urge the board to be involved in all of the meetings at the County Airport and Parks Committee when they discuss this, because they're learning as they go too, and just be in the loop as much as possible.
Okay. I'll make a motion that we proceed with the repaving of Garrett Bay Road and accept the bid of $154,900 from Northeast Asphalt, and that money be taken out of the contingency fund.
Second. What will that leave in the?
Can,
Oh, it's been seconded, so may I ask a question now, please?
Sure, go ahead.
What's left of the contingency fund then?
I'd have to go look at the numbers, if that is where the whole thing comes out of,
Is there enough money in there?
yes.
So what do you think is in there, Janet? 100, 150?
There's more than 100,000 in there.
there's some other issues or scenarios to deal with here also, so it might not all have to come out of contingency. I think we should deal with that at finance and make the
Finance,
final
yeah.
decision maybe after
Yeah.
that meeting on the 15th, or at that meeting on the 15th.
Yep, yep.
So what was the motion again?
That it would come out of contingency. Do you want to pull the second?
I'll pull the second.
Okay, and then the motion dies for lack of a second. I'll make a motion that we proceed with the resurfacing of Garrett Bay Road, accepting the bid of $154,900 from Northeast Asphalt, refer to the Finance Committee for their recommendation as to what fund that money comes out of, fund or funds that money comes out of.
Second.
Okay. Discussion?
Now I have another question.
Sure.
As Northeast Asphalt, will they honor that bid? It's however old it is?
Yes,
Yeah. Okay, any other discussion anybody has? All in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion is carried. Going on to number 10, consider town supporting financially a survey to gauge interest in a Northern Door Culinary Center. Lou, do you want to address this
Thank you, John.
initially?
Yeah, this is a proposal that has been on the front burner now of the Economic Development Committee for quite a while. And we have, again, like Joanne in geotourism, as a local resource, so to speak, we are blessed to have Mary Pat Carlson, who has a lot of experience in this as well. In general, what we're talking about here is what government can do, not in terms of a handout, but in terms of a hand up for a lot of people who need to have the ability to be a little bit less dependent and more independent. Much of the ability of anybody to do some food preparation as one of the most basic concepts, and be able to profit from that is prohibited by state statute, health statutes in particular. The kitchens need to have certain standards, which is totally understandable. And the a culinary center would be able to provide that. What we, and it's kind of amazing how we're just talking about one aspect of bringing or pumping dollars into the locality, the geotourism, and still respect the culture that we have. This concept, which is a very small business-oriented concept, would very much fit into the culture of Northern Door. But the bigger picture, though, is that tourism nowadays, a big component of that tourism has to do with food and beverage. When Darcy Piltz went down to Sturgeon Bay to receive the GEM grant for Uncorked Summer, the deputy tourism, the deputy of tourism for the state of Wisconsin presented her with a check and said as much, that food and beverage is what attracts people now. It may have been the arts in the 70s and pottery and so forth, and that's still a viable opportunity for many people, but food and beverage is certainly the key now. And just my own unofficial, I happened to work today at the tasting room at the Cider House, and I kept track of the fact that 181 people came through that Cider House today. And that was a relatively slow day compared to a weekend when several hundred, if not 300 or so, would come through. Most of those people had come through, and they came specifically. And some of the younger people, where this is certainly focused, said, we bought our cheese, we bought our wine, we bought our cider, and so forth. So in that sense, we are, if this is something that the town would pursue, on the cutting edge of something like that. And specifically tonight, if the board is willing, what we're looking to do, if we have our figures in order yet, and Mary Pat would be able to, and perhaps Joanne be able to add to that, is to be able to get started. It's sort of the chicken and the egg. And in order to get started, and maybe Mary Pat could say a little bit more about that, we need to get some basic information. And that's what the survey is hoping to do. But if Mary Pat
You
would
want to comment on it?
please do.
Yes, please.
Have a broken toe.
Oh, sorry. Take it easy. I believe you just got back from Cornell University, am I correct?
Hours ago. I went out for a one-day trip, and the airports made it possible for me to stay 3, because I spent about 40 hours in the airport, having flights rescheduled. But I went out there because I am working under an EDA grant to assess the gaps in resources in the state of Wisconsin for food manufacturing, not just culinary kitchens or incubator kitchens, but to assess the needs throughout the state. And so I've been working with Fab Milwaukee, and I've been working with some of the other state organizations, and including the Economic Development Corp, and had met with Cape last week down in Madison with a number of these. But the reason that I went out there was to just to do some research on what those facilities look like, because, and it was just kind of ironic that you were being, the presentation on the Niagara Escarpment, because I was part of the original team that worked on the Niagara Escarpment Research Network development with Jim Kettler about 3 or 4 years ago, because they did connect the food, the land, and the culinary experiences with the Niagara Escarpment. So I'm putting a few hours in that over the years. And I went out there to tour a number of facilities as part of the research for this project, but also to see what services and supports they have in place. And I toured with 2 different sites for Cornell. I went to a farming community. I went to a couple of rural areas out in that Finger Lakes area. And I'm exhausted, but I came back with a lot of information. And this research that we're doing, we, as our committee met, and we're meeting with David Studebaker and Karen Studebaker, and then Joanne Penny's on the committee that's helping me pull this interest and needs assessment together. And the need to do a survey is really important right now. But we're looking at it not just to see who needs to have a kitchen to use, because that's just one component. A kitchen is kind of not quite the right term for this, nor is incubator, quite honestly. But when we are working with the concept of a culinary center, that lets us pull in those other existing businesses, the restaurants, the, people that are doing culinary experiences, whether it's cheese tasting or cider houses or whatever, food-related agritourism, culinary tourism, because that's your strength. That's something that I think you can build on. And if we're including that in this interest survey that we're trying to develop. And we've come a long ways on pulling the survey together. We're hoping to get it out very soon and to use a different media to do that, and SurveyMonkey and a few other things, but also to get a hard copy survey out. And so that's what we're looking for, some support with the funding for that. Some of the things that I'm just going to give you an update of what I've done so far. I have done this research on some national sites, but I've also been to every shared use kitchen in the state of Wisconsin that's part of the Food Bin Network. So I've traveled to all those sites from Superior down to La Crosse, down to Milwaukee, and have met with every single director over the last 2 months. And then I've also connected with some of the key resource partners that I think will play a role in this, including Sam Perlman and Bill Choudoir from the Economic Development Corp, and Sally Martin and Cheryl Tiemann from NWTC, and then the UW Extension team. And those are just the first feelers I've put out to see what resources they can bring to the table, rather than a center up here having to create their own resources. Because the resources you have are your culture and the existing businesses and the things that are already here, and it's just trying to find a way to build on that. I haven't done any press releases at this point. We're running everything through Bud. I believe maybe David Studebaker has made some inquiry on the process for doing that. But I know that there's been some inquiries coming in. I did get an inquiry from the Village of Sister Bay that expressed an interest in, is there an opportunity to maybe partner on this? So there was a little discussion on that, and at that point I said I really have not done anything, and until I'm really contracted to Liberty Grove at this point. We are planning to do the survey in a number of different ways, like I said, but shortly after that we'd like to do some sort of an experience here where it's kind of a greet and meet and eat. And we would bring in some of the businesses that are interested in participating in doing a little sampling, and people like Joanne who are doing shelf-stable products, and using that as an informational opportunity to explain what the survey is about. And then the other thing that we're working on is trying to get the assessment of the survey results done as quickly as possible. So then we'll do a follow-up survey, a much more in-depth one. The first one's going to be very, very short, just to see how much interest there is. And we propose that we mail it out to the 3 zip codes. I think it was 3 zip codes that are kind of included in the Liberty Grove. So Sister Bay will fall into that. And there's no way to eliminate that. So those are the things that we're doing. We hope to get that survey cleaned up between our committee, and then I believe the process would be to run it through Bud, or I guess we'll find that out.
Hey, Mary Pat, this might be a very unfair question in that you've been at the airport for 40 hours, but do you have an idea what the cost of that survey might be?
Well, I
roughly?
did, we did a survey through the Village of Sister Bay, and I've done a couple of others. They used to be called Mary Morgan, and I think it goes under something else right now. But they sent back an estimate of somewhere around $400 for 500-piece mailing, and I don't know, we don't know the numbers that are within that. I just kind of took a stab at numbers.
You got
A mailing to the 3 zip codes that she's talking about, I'm gonna say somewhere between 600 and 700,
So it's a little higher.
depending on how you do it. You know.
Well, we had talked to the postal, and I think it was rural. I don't have that written down here, I'm sorry.
No, I mean, it depending on if you do postcard.
Oh, I
versus
see what you're saying,
letter.
yeah, yeah. We're looking at doing like a trifold, we kind of have the draft here, a trifold survey. That would just be taped, so I guess that falls under letter probably.
So may I ask a question?
Mhm.
If I was to get a survey saying the Northern Door Culinary Center, I'd want to know what exactly is a culinary center?
Right, and the way the survey is set up, and that's a good question, it's not just a survey, there's several panels to this, and they basically, explaining what a culinary center could be. And then one of the items on here is attraction to showcase local foods and businesses, and how that center could be used to do that. Another one is educational and training opportunities, including projects like, I put down NERN and the Wisconsin Arts Board, because those are both groups that I've been working with on other kitchens that I'm working with. And why a culinary center, and basically, not just because of the requirements for a need of a shared kitchen or a commercially approved kitchen, one that meets not only the state but the federal codes, but because it can be a center that builds on the businesses that already exist, the restaurants and the other food-related businesses.
So they would finance the Northern Door?
They would be able to use it.
Who would finance this whole project?
Who would finance it, though? Well, that's one of the parts of the study that I'll be doing following this, and I started working on it a little bit already, because that's the next component of it, was to see what resources were out there. And we may not even be talking about a new facility, it might be something that is might be available already, and just need to be upgraded. And I've contacted the USDA Rural Development. I've met with the Wisconsin Economic Development Corp. And I sent some information out on the funding opportunities through the Farm Bill that are targeted at food and food businesses. And in shared use kitchens were included in that. So there are, right now, for some reason, there's a number of possible grants out there.
The reason I ask is, Liberty Grove is not
Right.
flush with money at this point. in
Right,
time.
no. And when I look at doing something like this, one of the places I visited out in New York is Nelson Farm. And it's in a rural area of, I don't know what county it's in, but it's quite rural there. And a lot of vineyards, they're starting to do hops and brewery and things like that. But it is functioning, and was able to do that with some state dollars, but also with some federal dollars, and they've been operational about 30 years, I think. So they have a pretty historical reference to look at. But there has to be some sort of income-generating activity to make this self-supporting, self-sustaining, without having to look to the county or the town to support it.
Mayor Pat, I guess the question is then, if there's one in Kiwanee, why isn't that a good enough, so to speak? Why would we want one here? I'm
Well, I
kinda
think
playing
Joanne will
devil's advocate.
probably address that question a little bit. But, when you look at right now, the Kiwanee Kitchen in Algoma, we really are starting to do a lot of co-packing. We have 40-some businesses using that facility right now. And now the one in Green Bay has 25 or 26 as of today. And I think just the whole concept of local foods and entrepreneurs being able to look at using a facility, it's very difficult to travel that distance sometimes. I look at some of the people that are using the Algoma facility, and they're driving long distances to do this. And just today, Tom and Sue Sylvester, who live out on Kangaroo Lake, were down there, and they have to haul everything down there, make everything move everything back. It would be to their advantage to do that.
I look at people like Danny Peterson and the Sequists and other people who are actually in commercial kitchens at this point in time. and they've paid for their own commercial kitchen, and so I would wonder why they would welcome something like this.
Well, when you look, if you walk through Sequist, if you walk through my market, if you walk through Bob Lautenbach's market, you're gonna see a lot of local products that they're not making. People are looking for local foods, foods that come from the area they're visiting. And that's why they carry all the products they do. You can go to some places that only carry their own branded products, and there's a couple of them here in Door County, that they've got products on the shelf and it just has their name on it. They don't make most of those things. They're private labeled. Whereas Sequist makes their products, Bob Lautenbach makes most of their products, but they carry Joann's products, they carry my product, they carry other local products, because people are looking for variety. They're looking for something from the area they're visiting. And, I went out to New York. Did I need to buy another jar of jam? No, but I came home with a suitcase full. Because it was
No wonder you
just,
got stopped at the airport.
I know. And I didn't have carry-on, I was trying to tote most of it. But it is just a way to build on the economy and the culture. And this is really, and yes, I didn't get any grants given to me to start my business, and maybe Sequist didn't, I don't know, maybe they got some low-interest loans or something, I don't know. But this is part of economic development. This is finding a way to take the resources you have right here and not try to have to create some new ones. It's a way of supporting businesses long enough for them to get their feet on the ground, so that they can grow and they can have the technical support and the means to do it. Because most people, if they had to do this on their own and they had to put in a commercial kitchen, and they had to learn all the regulations and licensing codes and everything, they just wouldn't do it. It would be overwhelming.
I gotta tell you quite honestly, I'm not against the culinary center, but I think it's a county problem, not a town problem. The county's set up with funding for stuff like this, and have you gone to them and asked for funding?
I wasn't requested to do that. I was requested to do an interest survey and to find out what the need was up here. Will I go to them? If it's part of what shows up, I probably will.
No, I mean to do your survey and stuff like this, have you considered using that avenue? I mean, they're there to promote different economic development up here.
Well, when I submitted the proposal, and that was part of what I was going to do, was an interest survey. And part of that was that, I don't have it right in front of me here, but that there would be some extra expenses involved, and the survey was probably the only thing that was extra.
So the answer is you have not?
I have
gone to
not,
them.
because I didn't have any direction to do that.
It would seem to me there's nothing wrong with the concept, but it should be a county project. I mean, if people come clear down to Kewanee and up to Algoma and stuff like this, certainly going together with other parts of this northern Door, or even the entire Door County, would be more in line with what we should do here, instead of trying to take this on as the town of Liberty Grove.
We're not going to know that unless we do the survey, though.
No, no.
Thank you, Mary Pat.
Thank you.
Thank you for allowing me to speak here. One of the things I would like to add to this, and for you, Hugh, part of the area of Northern Door, there's been a lot of talk that it's almost like a dead zone. It's been mentioned that way. And the testament of the Uncorked Summer, how much excitement that generated. And how much, I had people come up to me and they try my product, said, this is what I'm looking for, something new, something different. It's not just, and in order to get these products, maybe people wouldn't do it if they had to do their own kitchen before they would put the product out. But what if, you have this kitchen and it's reasonable. I said, well, and this is what I did. I said, well, it's worth a try, because who knew? I didn't know if my products would work. You know, and I'm converting or things that I learned how to make in another country and trying to convert them into some type of formula here that the state and the federal government will accept as a process. And I give it to a processing authority and everything. That, you know, I learned all of this through being at the kitchen with Mary Pat. The other thing that the center down there does generate, and it was kind of exciting with the person with the escarpment and that, because you do have the opportunity of maybe even having not only the culinary center, but this whole center of interpretive center too. You know, would that work? You know, you don't overlook all those things, because those are opportunities, and maybe with an area like that where you want a group to come in to learn more about something, and then you want to offer them food, some of the wines made in the area, the cider and the beers. Would this be a really neat event? And when you have these things, people come into the area, people look at the area, they develop things. This is the hope of this. And that's why I was thinking, it would be maybe advantageous to Liberty Grove to have it in your area. It's just something to think about. You know, who knows, what'll happen, but, on the television shows on Discover Wisconsin and they have Wisconsin Life. There's been a lot of series on just that, those things. In fact, they did mention the Fox River, and then the first place where there was electricity, and how Kohler why they settled in the area they did. And it was very interesting. So I don't know, I just think that would be really good thing. And also that they are equating a lot of us small food processors as artisan food producers, because it is an art form. And a lot of people are not doing canning anymore, and I like to see that they're coming back to it again, that it's not a lost art. So thank you for letting me speak. And if anybody has any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just a quick observation. I don't think we had a winery in Door County 10 years ago, 12 years ago. Von Still would have been the closest one in Algoma. We now have 7 or 8 wineries, and guess what they've done? They didn't say, I don't want another winery. They banded together. They put out a brochure, they advertise together, and there's a wine trail in Door County. Lodging people didn't say, I don't want another lodging establishment. What did they do? They banded together. There's a group that, some inns of Door County. They have banded together, and they work through the visitor bureau, and they advertise together. They take out ads in Chicago Tribune newspapers, in block ads, and they advertise together. I think this is talk about a gold mine. This is another opportunity for the town to take a lead and improve the economics of the community. And if we can, and I'm going to say it again, this has been kind of my stump speech, but we need to attract and keep younger people in the community, and we have to provide an economic base that they can survive in. If we don't do that, that burden shifts back to the older retiring community members to foot the bill. I don't think that's fair. I think we have an obligation to the future of the town and an obligation to the people who exist here now. I did check with Janet. Economic Development has funds that have been budgeted that we could use to apply to have the survey taken. At least we can find out if there's an opportunity here. So
So the county has funds that we can use. Is that what you said?
The county? No, the town. Our Economic Development
Oh, our,
Committee has funds, so. Mike?
I asked to speak on this whenever.
Yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead. Bud didn't poke me before I got going, sorry.
Michael Mercier, Ellison Bay. I am on the Economic Development Committee and have been involved with conversations and discussions on this topic, with Mary coming to a number of our meetings and discussing it with the Economic Development Committee. I don't think I need to stand here and tell the board that if you look around at the most successful recent businesses, not just in Liberty Grove, but in various areas of the county, as Lou was stating earlier, it's about coming here and eating and drinking now. That's why people come here for their trip to Door County. The success of the Door County Beer Festival already in its second or third year now, Uncorked, various JJ's new venture with the goat cheese and so on. I mean, all of that stuff has really become kind of the focus lately. I think that this would do nothing but help that whole process. I agree with what John said, that we need to do what we can to help younger people move here and be successful. It is, as a somewhat younger guy, I'm getting older now, and you can see I've got a lot more gray hair than when most of you met me, probably, but it's not an easy place to live, work, and raise a family as a young person, and I think something like this would really benefit those that might have some thoughts and ideas of starting their own business, to kind of take part in, like I said, this kind of trend lately about food and drink. It's, throughout the county, there's numerous places that are doing well, that are in these kind of ventures. So I would agree with Hugh that, there's probably plenty of county funds, and the county might want to help us with this. I think it would be great for Liberty Grove to kind of carry the torch and start this thing, and I think it's, worth spending the $600 or whatever it might be just to send the survey out there to see what kind of response we get. I personally believe the response is going to be overwhelming, quite frankly, and from there, we would at least have something. If we want to go ask others to help or take part in it, we can show them and say, look, this is how many people think that this is a good idea. So I'm very much in favor of a board approving tonight to spend the few $100s to do the survey. Thanks.
Thank you. Do you have anybody else?
No.
There is hope in the retail environment that some of this interest in food and wine and so forth, they'll come looking for beer glasses perhaps, or wine glasses, or perhaps antique wine glasses and so forth.
I'd like to make a motion then, if I might, then, that the town financially support the survey with a not-to-exceed amount up to $800.
I think I'd go higher than that. I'd take it up to 1,000.
Make it even, just
Yeah.
make it 1,000. All right, I'll rephrase that. The board financially support the survey for the not-to-exceed amount of $1,000. The funds to be determined by the finance committee and the treasurer then, as to where it would come from.
I'll second that.
Second. Any other discussion on this?
I have a few questions.
Go ahead.
What are the three zip codes we're talking about here?
Well, part of,
54210.
yeah,
That's Ellison Bay.
5234 and
That's
the
Sister
Bailey's
Bay.
Harbor.
So you're surveying part of Sister Bay as well, then?
Sure. Liberty Grove is in, Sister
In
Bay is
Sister
in
Bay.
Liberty Grove. Yeah.
And Bailey's Harbor.
yeah.
Okay. I'll say it again. First off, we've given her some money already, $5,000 or something?
Mhm.
And
That's for
what's
phase,
that been
that's for
spent
phase
on?
one.
Pardon me? What has
That's
that been
phase
spent
one.
on?
Mary Pat, you want to answer what you've been?
We gave you some funds before, and you're asking for more now. Have you expended the first amount?
The first, I don't don't have that document with me, but that was based strictly on the time that I'm putting into it.
Do you charge us on an hourly basis, or how do you do
Yes,
that?
on an hourly basis.
What do you charge us per hour?
75.
Wow. You know, I'm just not gonna support this, and I tell you why. I think the other towns should get together, just like the inns got together, to do this as one group, not as single as Liberty Grove. We just don't have the money, guys, to jump off on something like this. It's a good idea, but we can get support from the other areas, I think.
I think we have the foresight, though.
No, ask them. We haven't, you gotta ask for money before people give it to you.
Any other discussion?
I feel as though we have to take the initiative on this. I don't see the county doing much for this town, either in the past, or the present, or the future. They're all interested in Sturgeon Bay and the central part of the county.
I think you're wrong, Frank.
I know I'm not. So I'm very much in favor of this.
Okay, all in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries 4-1. Okay, consider a request to install a bench at Grandview Park.
You got a picture of the bench in your,
Yeah, we did. Thank you, by the way.
in your mailing. And this is a request by the land trust to put something up there as near to something, what? A rock? Or a tree or something as possible. So it's not gonna be really in the way for,
Yeah.
sort of out of the way for maintenance and mowing and whatnot. So this is a request from them with the sample picture in your mailing plus the letter.
Will it be chained to an anchor?
Pardon?
Will it be chained to an anchor?
Yes,
Sure.
they all are.
Unfortunately. Okay, I'll make a motion to approve the request of the land trust to install the bench.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. Consider approval of the quote by Shabaka and Associates to give an opinion on the Ellison Bay Harbor issues. Bud and/or Gary?
I contacted Mr. Shabika
Oh, Shabika, I'm sorry.
after our last meeting, and he was out on the East Coast. He did get back to me when he got back up here, or his Illinois area, and said he would be happy to come up and investigate the situation at the harbor in Ellison Bay. I told him we were waiting for a report from the consultants at Bayview or Heritage Harbor has hired, and that he would stand by. He said that was fine with him because he's a little busy right now. If it was pushed back a few weeks or whatever the time frame, that he would have more time to come up here. So the bottom line is that he would come up and do an investigation and write a report for $2,500 plus travel.
I have a suggestion that if we go along with this, that he takes a look at that harbor. As long as we have somebody who's got that sort of background.
Takes a look at what harbor, John?
Ellison Bay, the town harbor.
So we're getting first we're getting an opinion from, what was the party that's gonna give us the opinion there, Bud?
From Heritage Harbor, who has hired JJR to look into it and give a report, as I understand it.
So wouldn't it pay just to wait and see what that report said before we?
Well, that's what we're doing.
Yeah,
That report, I think, is a couple of weeks away.
When I met with you guys before, this was what, 2 or 3 weeks ago, at that time, we just forwarded Bill Gross's initial
Right.
notes. At that point, Bill had said in order for me to give you a more exact answer, I would have to basically put on a scuba gear and dive on it. And it still might not be definitive, but it might be, at that point, we told him not to bring his scuba gear,
Okay.
and he's come and gone, so I don't know that we'll have anything else coming from Bill at this time.
Oh, okay.
It was, sorry, it was also my understanding that you all wanted someone who was, didn't have, what's the word I'm looking for, not unbiased, but,
Objective.
you know what I'm saying?
Objective.
No conflicts, right?
Yeah. So you've retained JJR?
To do what?
Oh, okay,
He's coming up to work on our gate with Mike Carr.
oh, okay,
He
okay,
just as sort of a favor walked over to the harbor
okay.
on one of those trips and looked at it.
So we in effect are not gonna get a report, right?
That's what I hear.
That's correct.
Okay.
But
Well,
the sheeting isn't down on the bedrock below. Obviously, stuff's gonna fall out. That's what's happening, correct, Bud?
That's the way it looks from the surface. Mike Carr measured the steel piling there, and he got, I think, 7.5 feet from the surface, and the bottom of the harbor is 8 feet.
So we got a
So-
6-inch gap.
So it's 6 inches short of being into anything.
What it boils down to was overdug so that the sheeting was exposed. Would that be a fair statement, do you think?
Not an engineer, can't tell you.
You know, if you were guessing, what would you tell me?
I'm not guessing.
You know,
I looked at it, and when the sheeting was put in, it looked to me, when there was no wind and the water was clear, that 2 sheets went down further than one, and that the one is about that far over where the bottom from the material, where the material from behind the sheeting is coming out. So it was obviously dug too deep. And as I mentioned in the previous meeting, I thought we should have a good opinion from a coastal engineer, and I gave Bud 2 leads. Did you follow those up, Bud, to see if anybody looked at them?
Yep, they didn't pan out. There's no coastal engineer that was offered by Rowan, and the other one did not pan out either.
Okay.
okay, just to remind everybody, this is a situation that the town basically has suffered some damage. I think we're probably faced with some legal recourse at some point in the future, but without concrete evidence, if you will, and concrete opinion of an engineer, I don't think we're going anywhere.
Did Mike Carr volunteer anything?
Yeah, he said they could put some rock down there, but that's not, that, we'd have to get the approval from Heritage Harbor, but that doesn't solve the problem of who caused the damage. And we do have a letter from Heritage Harbor's attorney, basically saying that, you know, they're out of it because Cole was the contractor. We have a different legal opinion than
I
that,
hope so.
that they're part and parcel of it. And at some point in time, I would think that I would suggest that we make the overture, if we go through with this, we would make the overture to Heritage Harbor to join in a joint suit. Which
Might be cheaper just to make a joint repair.
might be, but we're not gonna know anything until we get somebody down there and to give us an opinion. And the sentiment seems to be, we need a coastal engineer to do that. Which I don't have any problem with that. But
Have we talked with somebody like Bodwin or Carr or something? Like, you said Carr can't do it because he might want to do the work or something, or?
Yeah,
Yeah, we talked about Carr. Mike is reluctant to do any investigation because he might be bidding on any work that might come. Bodwin has already done work for Heritage Harbor in the surveying or laying out the parameters of the parcel there, the property lines. When I talked to Rowan, they were aware of what's going on up here, and from the way he talked, they were real hesitant to get involved in it. Also, I talked to Peterson from AECom and mentioned this coastal engineer scenario, and he said, well, they do, well, they might not have an exact coastal engineering degree or mention on their sheepskin. They do study coastal engineering when they're going for their degrees, and that's the type of work that they do. So, and then after, I told them to put it on hold because we were going to wait previously for an opinion from Bill Brose, but that's not gonna happen now. And then I contacted Mr. Shabika, like I said, and talked to him, and he said that he would be glad to come up, as would be AECom, who don't have the coastal engineering moniker on their degree or whatever. And
But they are PEs.
the same thing was with Rowan, that they said, well, they're not coastal engineers per se, but they do coastal engineering work.
But this other firm is a PE.
Pardon me?
The other firm here is a PE though? Professional engineer. registered.
Shabika?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, if they're coastal engineers, yes.
Hey, I've got a couple of questions. The damage that has happened to the town property, ballpark figure as to how much we're talking here? Thousands, hundreds of thousands, tens of thousands? I mean, do we have any estimate at all?
No, and we won't have anything until we get the exact
Okay.
investigation done.
It would seem to me, just based on the meetings we've had and what we've talked about, that this has a fairly significant likelihood of winding up in court. And if that's the case, I guess I would be most supportive of having the most highly educated person we could have doing the investigation and giving testimony.
He is, Mr. Shabika, in discussing with him, he said that he is hired as a expert witness in another lawsuit against another engineering firm. So he does that kind of work.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
I just was, is there a little bit more you could share with us on who this Shabika guy is? He's a coastal engineer, is that what I understand?
Yes.
And is that a firm that's like out of Green Bay, or where?
Northern Illinois.
Illinois.
Okay. And how did we come by this guy? Just,
My husband used to work for him.
okay.
Well, and then that takes me back to my comment, is if you're gonna get somebody here, that harbor is in desperate need of some thought process as to what, if anything, can be done with it to help it.
Gary had a comment.
Gary?
Is he gonna look at just the main walkway, or is he gonna
Well,
look at the
that's-
whole harbor?
Initially, my discussion with him was the area that's where the damage is, and what he asked for were drawings of that section if we could forward them to him, but
There aren't any.
we don't have any drawings of that. So whoever comes up is gonna have to do a first-hand look at it.
We could actually give them a drawing of the whole harbor, I mean,
And I think if we do go that way, I'll talk to him and say, well, as long as you're up here, we'd like you to do this. What, will that impact your fee at all? So, he knows what he's getting into when he gets up
Yeah.
here.
Did I hear correctly at the meeting that we had several weeks ago that there are no coastal engineers in Wisconsin?
That's true.
Isn't it?
They do coastal work, but I
Yeah.
guess they don't have
They're
that
not coastal engineers.
engineering designation on their diplomas or whatever they have, or licensing.
Go ahead.
John, I'm the only person in the room that's owned a harbor for 23 years, and it gives you a lot of experience. I think that we should go ahead with the Shabika thing. I think if we want him to come and assess the value of the extension pier in the middle of the harbor, I think we ought to have him also look at the rest of the thing. And I think we're not going to know a final figure until Bud gets back to him and includes those additional matters. I think we should be thorough in anything that we do in the future for repair, enlargement, or maintaining that pier. We're going to need this type of opinion before we do anything. As far as coastal engineers, they're not PEs by any means. There's only one major university in this country, the University of Michigan, that trains and gives degrees in coastal engineering. It's a very, very special one. We had a coastal engineer in the Department of Natural Resources up until about 10 or 15 years ago. And since then, there's nobody in the state that I know of that has done this type of work. So I would like to postpone the decision on Mr. Shabika until Bud has a chance to add the additional responsibilities and get a figure. And I think in any event, it's the basic foundation of what we have to do in the future. Thank you.
And then, to leverage off of what Nancy said earlier, you know, the potential here in terms of exposure to the town for the repairs and who then would ultimately pick up the tab for that might have to be settled through the courts, if not through something else. And if we're not going to if we're not going to support the findings of an expert at this point, we will eventually, regardless. It's not, it's either going to be now or we'll just have to pay the piper later.
It's inevitable.
It's inevitable.
Yeah. Well, we've got another meeting coming up 2 weeks from now. In that time, in the interim, should we have Bud go ahead and find out what, if there would be an additional expense and what it would be?
Bud, there's only one suggestion I might have. Johnny Fitzgerald built that harbor. I wonder if his family would still have some records. that
Well,
he-
we've
and-
got the
And
spec-
the other thing is.
We've got the
not on-
specs here on it.
Not only the specs, but I wonder if the state who issued a permit on that would have the proper drawings.
We've got, I think we have that right here, but I can see if they have anything extra. We've got the specifications, drawings, and I'm sure the actual permit itself that was given out. The thing we don't have is the, what was put in over in Heritage Harbor's side of it there, that piling that we're talking about.
Okay,
That'd be
So-
public record though, would it, Bud?
Of course. I would, when I talk to Shabika, I'm gonna dig all that out first, and I'm sure he's gonna wanna look at that before he comes up here. So
Okay.
he's familiar, knows what he's gonna be looking at, so, there'd be no problem in getting him on board tonight, just to what degree are we going to? We'd know that later.
yeah. If you find that, Bud, I'd like to see it when you find it. Thank
We
you.
got folders.
Okay, wonderful.
Well, I'll make a motion to table this consideration pending the additional information that the administrator is going to receive.
Can I make a comment before someone seconds
Sure.
that, please? That is that there's lots of docks built around the Great Lakes, and I think that you can probably find a PE in Green Bay or somebody to give you an equal opinion. I don't know, that's my feeling of it. I think you need to have someone look at it, there's no question about it, who is a qualified engineer, but we're just talking about some sheet piling here, we're not talking about a major harbor.
Well, I think we may be talking about a major harbor, though. I mean, if we're talking about having him take an additional look at the harbor, it's,
You're talking about the crib at the end of the dock that's tilted, that was probably undermined,
you know, it's been pushed back up a little bit.
you know.
Mike did that. But we've got a situation where basically Band-Aids have been put on the wound for, I don't know how many years. And that's gonna continue unless we take a good hard look at this. And, you know, it may be a hard pill to swallow, but,
Well, if you look in the bills tonight, we refunded a slip rental because
yeah.
one of our renters doesn't feel safe on the pier there, so we're losing income on it as we speak.
All right, I'll second the motion.
Okay, any other discussion?
That's a second to a table, there's no discussion.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Operator licenses, we have 3 new, 3 renew. Everything copacetic? And we also have a picnic license from the Liberty Grove Historical Society. I'll make a motion to approve the operator licenses and the picnic license as presented.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. I see there is no correspondence tonight.
Just a second meeting.
Just the second meeting. Future meetings.
The office will be closed on Friday, first and foremost. Highway Committee meets
Why?
Monday at 8 a.m. Library Committee or Commission meets Tuesday at the 8th at 1 p.m.
Did somebody say there was a Parks Committee meeting on the 8th?
Parks and Property meets on the 8th at 8 a.m. to review the parking situation at the harbor in Ellison Bay. Plan Commission meets Wednesday, the 9th at 7 p.m.
Can I add something to that? We have reopened the comprehensive plan, and we will be discussing the transportation element. And we would encourage anyone who has any interest in it whatsoever to attend the meeting or write any of the email or write down any of the issues that they would like to see us tackle as we go through the transportation element. And we want to keep our activities as a plan commission with this reopening at the forefront and in the public eye. So I'll be mentioning it at every single board meeting, every single plan commission meeting. So, yeah, if you have an interest at all, be there.
Friday, the 11th at 1:15, there's a scheduling conference at the judges' chambers regarding the Old Stage Lane lawsuit.
Do as you were.
Saturday, the 12th at 11 a.m., there's a dedication of the garden at the library. Monday, the 14th, IT Committee meets at 7 o'clock. 15th, Finance Committee at 5 o'clock. 16th, Town Board at 7. 23rd, Plan Commission. 26th, Open Book from 11 to 1. And the 28th is the first day in-person voting can be held for the August 12th primary election. That,
As long as you're into August, on the Monday, the 18th at 8 o'clock is the fire board.
what day is that?
Yeah.
Monday, August 18th,
Fire Board?
8 o'clock.
Okay, before we adjourn, I would like to leave you with rule number 508 from Eleanor Roosevelt. Courage is more exhilarating than fear, and in the long run, it is easier. I move we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Those of you who are left.